Hey everybody, welcome back to Fun Zone. My name is Nordista Freeze. It is a beautiful Friday afternoon. I've been outside, it feels great, and now I'm here in the toy closet, doing what I love to do, which is talking to my friends about their art, music, and life. Today, I have a friend out of Cincinnati named Griffin Roberts who's going to be joining me. Um, we met I think for the first time at Freeze Fest 3 back in 2017 when I hosted his band, the Agoraphobes, and he's now got a music and art project that he's going to be telling us about called Retail. So without further ado, let's welcome in Griffin Roberts.
Hey, what's going on, man?
Dude, what's going on?
Nothing much.
May I call you Griffin?
You may indeed call me Griffin, but I
Cool.
prefer Reptilian Overlord.
Reptile. I wasn't sure if if the project Retail was like your artist name or it's more of like a project name because it's
Retail
everything.
it's my name. We're one and the same.
Yeah.
That being said, we're more of a group. Retail is actually one day I was having a very manic episode and I was working on this project with a couple people, and I just started having these real breakthroughs about what I would consider the way that artist culture operates currently, especially in the world of people being their own PR officers. And in that
Yeah.
episode, I wrote a manifesto with 5 key ideas. And in that 2 weeks, I recruited 10 to 15 people to be a part of this team. And that really, at its core, is what retail is. It's a group of us, 15 people, kind of working to accelerate towards these 5 principles that we came up with a long
Are
time ago.
are all of y'all based in Cincinnati or all in Cincinnati?
No. Well, we live in New York now, obviously, so the
Oh,
majority of
you're in
us
New
are New York
York.
based. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Did you not realize? Yeah,
I didn't
I,
know
I live
that.
in New York City. So the majority of us are New York based. Um,
Whoa.
really, no one is. Oh, there's only one person who's a visual artist who works for us who's still in Cincinnati, whose name is Dylan, and he's very talented. But yeah, most of us are in New York City. Yeah, New York. There it is.
Wow. Did y'all move together or were you already just reaching out to people in New York when you started this?
Yeah, well, I had a lot of connections for people in New York, specifically here. 5 people moved out here together. Um, yeah, so 5 of us moved out, but a lot of it is recruiting. Truthfully, once we've been out here, the team kind of switched halfway through pretty intensely, just because obviously with the virus, people's lives kind of get thrown to the wind, so you have to just pick up the pieces and move on. But
Right.
uh, you know, when a soldier falls, you just got to recruit new ones. That's all it is.
Wow. And so there's like you say 10 to 15 people in the project right now?
Yeah. Some of them kind of rotate in and out between specific goals and projects. But especially in New York, everybody's trying to connect and make certain things. So everyone wants to be a soldier. They're all just looking for a general. So retail has just kind of been that war force for a lot of people in a time right now where there's not really much to do unless you make something for yourself to do. So
Yeah.
we are that construction.
Do you consider yourself the leader of the pack?
We are a democracy under dictatorship, and I am the dictator.
I see, I see. Okay, interesting. So, do you think how do you go about recruiting people to be a part of a project that you feel like or like in Nashville, I feel like a lot of musical projects, especially it's like they're all solo projects and other people will play for them, but it's very removed. It's very much like this is
Yeah.
your project, not
Well, if
mine.
anything, this is kind of where I got my lesson in this because when I learned in Nashville, what I learned in Nashville very quickly is that there's 2 classes of people in Nashville. And this is how I break it down to people who ask me about it. There's the band leader class, and then there's the musician class. And the band leader class is the one guy who runs around and gathers a team of 5 to 6 people and puts them together for whatever use and runs the clock out. And then the musician class are people who are always kind of like they're more active workers. I would almost describe them more as like craftsmen. Like a
Right.
Nashville guitar player is like a chair builder. He knows how to build a chair, and the band leader class is looking for someone to decorate a living room. So he gets a chair builder and an upholsterer and someone to lay the grout, and then you put them together. Um, and you're right, it is very removed. That's actually one of the things I don't really like about the Nashville music scene. Is I think some of the most interesting music takes place when a lot of people take ownership over the same idea and kind of force it into this new I just think it's really hard for
Hmm.
one person to be so original that they can single-handedly push something into a new space. I think it's like the meeting points of different tastes that generally create something interesting, even if it's just behind the scenes. Which I do think there is a lot of like co-writing that goes on behind the scenes in Nashville that kind of gets like swept under just because the single name goes on the title. But to
Right.
me, in terms of recruiting, I think it's all about shared belief and retail is a very specific ideology more than it is a group of people. So if you buy into the ideology, if you get what we're about and you're willing to go to war for it, then you're in, and that's the end of it. And one of the core principles of retail is that there's room for everyone in retail. Everyone can be a part of retail, and we will find a place for you. So if you express interest to me and you want to be a part of what we're doing, make room, regardless of who it is. There is no outside of retail. Everything is retail all the time.
Wow. Okay. So is it primarily a music project, or is it also like visual art and events and?
Well, right now it is more of an event visual project. Obviously, because I am a musician, that really is the tool that I bring mostly. But truthfully, the most people that I work with are visual artists or event planners or people who work, especially here in New York, they work in new media. So they do a lot of like, I have a lot of like music video directors who are kind of a part of the team, stuff like that. We have a band, we have people who play instruments, like that side of things. But really, the stuff that excites me is more on what I would describe as the marketing visual arts side of the project. We have a couple programmers who have been doing some very interesting stuff for us that I don't want to go into too much detail in a recorded setting,
Right.
but it's part of our guerrilla campaign to just rain terror down on the United States and the world at large. So they work on that primarily.
You say terror as there's like a siren going crazy in the
That's
background.
right. Well, I caused that. I willed it to be.
Yeah, apparently so. So, do you live with a lot of those cats here in New York? Or
I live with two other people. I live with my life partner Theo, who is the co-head of retail, and then I live with a very good friend Quadri, who is Nigerian and he sells designer clothing. He's basically a designer clothing reseller.
and they're both a part of the project as well,
They are, yes.
or the
Quadri is like
collective?
the man who puts it together.
Yeah. Okay. So, do you still consider yourself a music artist? Are you still creating music?
Yeah, I mean that's my primary thing. Right now, I've been working very hard on our first album that will be coming out, which is going to be called Narrative. Uh, so that's really been kind of what we're pushing towards. I mean, the truth is, Freeze, you know what the Agoraphobes was, which was my old band.
That's
And we
right.
had a very like 90s nostalgia sound, I would really say. Like we sound like 90s alt rock. And I feel like finally that sound has really entered the mainstream in terms of people really like connecting to music that sounds like that. Just in time for me to get really bored of that sound and kind of hate it. So I'm kind of in an interesting place where a lot of the album has been negotiating between an old sound that I had and really wanting to push into new, more like bold spaces and not make things that people like, but more just tell them that they should like what I'm doing.
Hmm.
Uh, so that's a lot of what the negotiation of the album is just how experimental do I want to be before I think I'm being too self-indulgent.
Right.
So like Bright Ideas, which is like a classic, that'll be on the album because I think it's just a good marketable song, but no one's going to call that song bold. It's not revolutionary. It's just catchy at the end of the day.
Hmm.
And sometimes I want to be more than just catchy.
Yeah. Right. I think in the agoraphobes, I would also, if someone asked me, I'd kind of classify it as like power pop in a sense too, in the same way as
Yeah,
I'd
for
call
sure.
the Lemonheads or Weezer or something.
Oh, definitely it was heavy, heavy Weezer, which I'm not ashamed of. Like, power pop is good quality music. It's
Straight
pop
up.
music with more punk energy, and I think that really is a meeting ground that a lot of people can get behind and support. I just think that a lot of power pop artists are so outrageously corny that it kind of even Weezer really have a legacy of being aggressively corny, which
Yeah.
I'm a Weezer apologist. But even listening to Pinkerton, like an album I loved when I was 16, like now listening to it, I totally get the criticism. Like it is just a little like it's a little Morrissey minus the poetry. You know what I mean? They make up for the fact that they're not poets and they're saying really like straightforward sad things by just overcompensating with energy, and you can connect to the energy, but when you start to dissect it, it does fall apart pretty quickly, I think.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and that's really interesting. Okay. So, will you send me that song, which we can talk about this or not, but you send me that song, The Cost of Rope. Is that something
Yeah.
that's like you're working towards or something you're wanting to talk about, or should we
That I would
move on?
say is like my ultimate version of like the new sound that is still accessible. Like the cost of to me is gonna be probably one of the best songs on that album, just in terms of it being marketable. Um, it's pretty straightforward. It has a lot of energy. It has a lot of power pop, but I
Yeah.
tried very hard to keep it to the level of poetry that Pepper removed, and so it can be a little dissected, which is very pretentious to say. I'm aware, audience who's listening, it's very pretentious to talk about yourself being poetic. Um, but yeah, the cost of rope to me is like an ideal of something I'm working towards. I think it's the closest I've come to like wrapping the idea of like power pop into something new. I think it's the closest I've come in terms of that. I have another song called Ping Ting Comes for Fire that goes a little past that point in terms of punk energy that I think will be more like a live, aggressive, just
Hmm.
raw song. And then also I have songs like Monomania, which I think really embrace more of like the I don't know, the trance 80s stuff that I also really love. I mean, I want to just
Yeah.
say that I think music operates in two phases in all history. Somebody invents a sound and then somebody popularizes it. And to
Mhm.
me, the new sound that has been invented is like this Euro trash, crack cloud, the voids sound that hasn't really been able to break through to the mainstream. So I think it's really like to take this new wave of like I would almost describe it as internet noise and just
Wow.
elevate it to a level where it can be popular, because I just think people who are really obsessed with making new sounds and being experimental are so unafraid, they're so the audience that they actually don't bother to make the song good sometimes. Fair, and I really don't come for it, but in the way that the Killers ripped off Interpol, I would like to rip off Crack Cloud and stuff like that,
Wow.
which if you're watching this and you don't know about Crack Cloud, get into Crack Cloud. They're totally undigestible, but they're really good.
Yeah, I gotta check that out. I'm not familiar with their music. Do you dig 100 Gex?
I do and I don't. I think it's like it's so over the top that sometimes it folds in on itself and it's nothing but ironic.
Right.
But at the same time, some of their music is good, and I appreciate the fact that they're willing to be bold.
Yeah.
Truthfully, as an old fan of MIA, like I feel like when I listen to 100 Gex, I really just get a lot of like MIA vibes, and that's generally what I like the most out of it. Uh,
Cool.
yeah, but their remix album, I did not like it very much at all. I like their original, but when they were just getting Fall Out Boy to do random guitar stuff over nonsense, it folded in on itself a little too much.
That Fall Out Boy track was crazy. What is your relationship like with social media in terms of creating something that is involved in like audio and visual and design and
You
everything?
know, truthfully, we were taking social media very, very seriously, and we were kind of doing it in a very just over the top way. I think the big thing about social media that you learn really quickly when you're trying to advertise is that social media only exists and rewards people who maximize the amount that people look at them. So I think quality and quantity are fundamentally opposed to each other.
Hmm.
And all social media rewards quantity, which I think is hard when you're an artist and you're trying to hold on to your mystique and your identity to constantly craft something that falls within the world you're trying to build. So we were posting pretty consistently, kind of just like we were just writing whatever we felt like, small manifestos and just posting. But truthfully, we totally stopped doing social media around the time of the BLM protests, just because we were like, well, we can't really post right now. Like there are bigger concerns than our art career. And on top of that, then with coronavirus, we just feel like I don't know. There was a time when we just stopped because we just felt like the world was kind of just on fire, and who's trying to promote their weird art project in the middle of a forest fire? It's just a narcissist who can't calm down. Uh, so I think in the near future we're going to get back into it with a total reevaluation. Although truthfully, what's really revolutionized social media even since we stopped is TikTok being a powerhouse. And truthfully,
Right.
we've gone out of our way to recruit people on TikTok with 500,000 followers, stuff like that. So I think our new plan really will be to engage with TikTok above everything else, just because I think it also is one of the most unfiltered platforms, and it just doesn't force you to draw lines in the way that other social media apps do. Like even on Instagram, if you don't go out of your way to see something, there's a very small chance you'll see it. So what you're really doing on Instagram is promoting to people who already know you, which is fine, but at a point they already know you, they're already up to what you're doing. So that's about keeping people in the loop more than it is about painting a picture or doing anything else. It's like a scheduling tool, which I find very just uninteresting. Frankly, it's a level of just like labor that is just so unnecessary. You know.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
The algorithm is definitely like, well, the whole Instagram only, yeah, you post something, the only people that see it are people who follow you. There is like an explore page, but it's very underutilized. A lot of people don't
yeah.
use it at all. And even if you do go to it, it's typically what goes into a discover page is like very
memes.
popular, yeah, like meme accounts and stuff. Whereas every TikTok that you post goes to a new audience. Like
It
that's the
just they
whole
just show it
thing.
to random people and see if you like it,
Yeah,
which
exactly.
is the beauty of the app. But it's also why that app is just catastrophically dangerous because I think people learn real quick that um, I think the biggest thing that everybody is lacking in their lives is authenticity. And so people weirdly try to wield how authentic they are as weapons. And I think people have learned that the most authentic part of yourself is the part of you that is ugly. And so people on TikTok will just blast what makes them ugly on full display, no apologies, for the sake of being relatable, and that's kind of what goes viral. And so people get into this arms race of being as ugly as possible publicly because that weirdly is perceived as being more authentic than being pretty. Like if I were to
Hmm.
post a picture of me waking up in the morning and I look like shit and I post that, that would always be perceived as being more authentic than if I woke up and I just happened to look good and post a picture, even if the same amount of effort went into both. So I think people are maximizing their own ugliness in order to relate to other people, and I think that's kind of
Interesting.
where it gets dangerous. I also have I have that opinion on TikTok music too, where I feel like a lot of music right now on that platform that goes viral is kind of low key music that gives you permission to be a bad person. And I think sometimes people want that permission from someone that they see as bigger than themselves to be like, I'm ugly, so it's okay for you to be ugly too. We're all ugly. I'm a disgusting rat boy. I'm a mud person. But at the same time, like I think we're always working for something better. And I'm afraid of relatability killing the idea of like growth or beauty in very like real ways, which is again very pretentious to say, but it is true. Like
Yeah.
that's how I feel about it.
Interesting. I don't know a ton about TikTok music. I know like Super Lonely, which isn't necessarily like ugly, but it's definitely a very self-deprecating and
With
like
Gus Dapperton on the back half. Yeah.
mm-hmm
See,
song.
Gus
But
Dapperton is like the key guy who I totally feel this way about. Like I hate Gus Dapperton so much. I hate what he stands for. I hope he watches this and knows that some asshole from Ohio hates him, because his songs totally do that. They do the other thing I can't stand is whenever a relationship breakup song blames the other person the whole way through. And if you listen to
mm,
Gus Dapperton songs, half of his songs are like, "How could you do this to me? I'm just hanging out doing whatever, and fuck you. I'm only snacking." What a horrible song. What a horrible message in a song. It sounds good or whatever, but light that
right.
song on fire.
Wow. Interesting. So do you engage with like with TikTok and stuff? Are you like do you spend a lot of time just kind of like exploring and like seeing like trying to
Yeah, what I like to
understand it?
do pretty consistently is I like to just start new accounts because when you start a new account, the algorithm doesn't think it's figured you out, so it just shows you everything that's popular. So I
Right.
like to restart an account maybe once a week, scroll through just so I can see like whatever the trend is, whatever's happening. I mean, I do genuinely think it's the best social media app to ever exist.
Yeah.
Unironically, I think that is the truth. It's the closest to what I think we were promised in social media, which is like pure organic growth. Where like in other apps, they really try to like close the faucet of dripping organic growth as much as they can, and TikTok doesn't do that at all. Um,
Right. They want to close that faucet so they can open it to you if you are willing to pay them
that's right.
money.
That's what like that's what Instagram ads are for. They tried to
Yeah.
close your organic growth and then they sell it back to you.
Yeah, right. I mean, I remember when I first started doing music, we had like my band in high school had a Facebook page because that was actually a
Yeah,
successful. You would post something and people would see it. But
just
now,
naturally.
I
You didn't
mean,
have to fight for it.
yeah, exactly. Anyone that has messes with a Facebook page at all as an artist or as anything will
Yeah.
tell you if I posted something right now, it would probably get like two people would see it. They
And more than that,
really
it'll say
close.
two people saw it, but you could get 1,000 people to see it if you give us $5 right
Yeah,
now.
just
It
five
literally
bucks.
sends you that ad immediately,
Yeah,
which is yeah, it's really just what's suck. I mean, you get it because they need to make their money, but that is how they
right.
operate is by shutting off organic growth as much as possible and then trying to sell it back to you, which I think is especially cruel right now, considering that in places that aren't like a New York City, like organic spaces are totally on hold. You can't do what you used to do, which is grow locally, and then once you reach a point of like critical mass, try to move that onto the internet with your group. Because anyone trying to do anything right now can only grow digitally. So for them to even clamp down on the spaces more, it just we've boxed ourselves into a corner as like artists
Yeah,
where you can only market digitally. And then the other side of it is that I think people are so inherently embarrassed to market themselves that they actually can't stop themselves from apologizing while they're marketing. They'll make posts that are like, they'll make an ad and then they'll do a follow-up post or say something that's like, I know that self-promotion sucks, but like it's just I have to do it. And
yeah,
I'm just
right.
when I say that, I'm just like, fuck you, because
Yeah.
You if you the shame you feel is because you put no effort into the ad. If the ad was interesting, you wouldn't apologize for it. You're just doing the laziest version of promoting because you kind of feel like marketing is like a gross dirty word, when the truth is like marketing, even from an artist perspective, is what controls everything you like. No one is on SoundCloud updating by recently uploaded to find their new music. They hear it from somebody, they see an ad, they do whatever.
Right.
They see it in a record store, but like the level of promotion that goes into any growth is it's so intense that I just wish people would embrace it more and kind of just market almost like unashamedly. They should just take it to the. They should be Nathan Fielder and market in the most absurd ways possible,
Right.
as aggressively as they can all the time, because that's the only way to do it in a way that isn't embarrassing. Is taking it so seriously that it's almost art itself. Like how far you're willing to go with your own promotion.
Yeah, right. And we're all, yeah, I totally agree. Whenever I'm talking like artists, especially who are like newer, that's always something I'm trying to convince them to not worry about. Because I think people, I mean, so many people, especially when you're younger, like now you can see it more distinctly, more clearly. When you're like, let's say in high school, and your
Yeah,
friends are like, yeah, I'm thinking about doing music. It's like, you're like, you just see how talented they are. You're like, well, they're a great songwriter and a great musician. So I think they have what it takes. But
yeah.
then like when you get a little bit older or you've been in the game for a minute, you realize it's like promotion and like work ethic and stuff are like the driving force. I mean, you could be the best songwriter. People who are like the best
Yeah.
songwriters, and they just sit in their room and just like to hang out because it's
Well,
not
and more than that, I just think music and art in general has reached this point where there's so much of it all the time that, like, if you really think about it, if you think about the art, like, this always blows my mind. Like, growing up, you hear about Jim Morrison, and he's like this crazy, he's a drug guy, he's getting drunk, trying to burn the city down. Then you go listen to the Doors' first album, and he has songs like Backdoor Man, where he's just singing blues songs. They're just the most
right.
standard songs ever. Or like even Jimi Hendrix, you're like, this is the guy that everyone thought was crazy, because there was even the act of making a record was so gatekept that if you were a big personality, you could put out totally mediocre music and just sell it entirely on your personality. Now there is so
Mm,
much music that the only music that really gets through that isn't like just by chance or by marketing is music that is so aggressively personality driven that they actually aren't even supporting the song. They're really just supporting the creator. I mean, I would put you in this category, not to just like totally dissect or whatever, but
no, no,
you
it's cool.
sell Nordista Freeze more than you sell your songs. That's why your live shows are always what they are, because you're not rolling the dice and saying, I hope this song is good enough that people like me. You go out and wage war on people constantly with the bombastic energy that you bring, which is the
Yeah.
correct solution. That is the correct answer, which is why it really just bums me out when I know a lot of really good songwriters. And frankly, I would even put myself in this category. When I was younger, I used to just write songs about girls, and that was pretty much it. Because like when you listen to the radio, you're like, all I hear is songs about girls, so that's probably what I should be writing about too. Um, when really, like, I think everyone should be striving to build a personality cult, and it's no longer talent; it is your personality that sells. And so when I meet musicians and they're like, I want to practice guitar 8 hours a day, I'm more inclined to tell them they should just figure out who they are, and if that's an interesting person, if that's someone they want to share with everybody, because that will get you the miles more than your music. I'm a terrible guitar player and I'm a terrible musician in general, but that's never stopped me from doing anything because I can just yell louder than other people, and that's really what it
Right.
comes down to.
I think there's a lot of truth to that. I mean, if somebody wants to be a good guitar player, and that could be a part of their artistry, or maybe when that's a part of their performance. When they're on
Right.
stage, they can shred. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, I do think that music, it always kind of has been that way. But I think it's pushing more. Maybe for a while it wasn't as much, and now with social media and like just the way the world works, it's like I think more and more. I would totally agree. It's becoming more personality driven. And when I make music, I don't. Yeah, that's really astute. I've never made a song and crossed my fingers because I mean, if the algorithms go crazy with it, that would be awesome. I would love to have some virality, and I do work towards making interesting content or music, and I want to make better art. But also, I just know that
Yeah.
for me, it seems like the only thing that shows real results is just like going back out on tour and like meeting people
Well,
and converting fans in a live setting.
you learn how cheap virality is the second you get a taste of it. We put out a music video right at the end of last year, and in the first 3 days, we were able to get it to trend number one on this subreddit. And
Cool.
because of that, we got, I think, like 10,000 like YouTube views in like a couple days. A couple radio stations I really liked in LA actually played our song. It was like this big like um, it's this big moment because it's like the first thing you're trying to do. But the thing you realize is like most of those people, they'll like you for a song, but unless you can really convert them and turn them over into something else, like it's just a number that evaporates in your hand. Like I have friends, I have songs that I've worked on that went on like Apple or the Spotify modern psychedelic playlist, and they have 500,000 streams in a month, and they get all this blow up, and then the numbers just go away, and they're just back to being my friends from Cincinnati, just putting out an album for 10 people to listen to.
Wow,
So it's
yeah.
like at the end of the day, virality is viral, but it's short. And so it's like I don't even want to bank on that. I care very little about having any viral content because that's not sustainable, nor is it like that good for you anyway. You know, it's just cheap.
Yeah. You know who keeps coming to my mind during this conversation is that guy Hobo Johnson who had that like
Oh, I
NPR
hate
Tiny
Hobo
Desk thing.
Johnson. I hate Hobo Johnson
Really? Why is that?
because he's what I was telling you about earlier. He's the guy who is so just makes himself as ugly as possible to be relatable. And at the end of the day, his songs just make him sound like a bad person. And then I go to the comments and everyone is like, "Oh, I totally relate to that feeling." And it just makes me queasy thinking like his viral song is about a girl who's not into him and him just destroying himself and awkwardly trying to position himself as the nice guy in her life so that eventually she'll like him. And
Right.
all these comments are like, that's so sad. Like I feel you. It's like she doesn't feel you. She's upset that you're using friendship as some tool to game her into eventually liking you. That's
Right. It's like unethical.
and the song never acknowledges that. So it's like fuck you. Just because you're
Yeah.
showing how ugly you are doesn't make me. That doesn't mean you're not ugly at the end of the day. I get it. Like look,
Yeah.
I'm a rat boy. I tell people that all the time. I'm a rat boy. I'm a mud boy. I'm ugly. I'm an ugly person. I totally get that. But at the end of the day, you can't make art with that only shows you're ugly and gives no substance behind it, or else you're just giving the world permission to be a little uglier. And like, is
Hmm.
that really what we're trying to do right now? Like, is there really not enough shit? We need to lower our personal standards as well through song. Like,
Interesting.
Jesus,
Yeah, I've never listened to any of his music aside from seeing that video that I mean that
Tiny Desk one.
the Tiny Desk one, and I mean, yeah, I definitely can see your critique. However, it did accomplish, on the other hand, what you're talking about with personality. I mean, my
That's
jaw
right.
dropped. Like when I watched it, I was just like, this is going to blow up because just nothing exists like this. It's
No,
so
yeah,
personality driven. You
he went
totally
for it. He
like,
really did put himself center stage, which is the other side of that criticism. Like, I totally give him credit on that. It went viral for a reason, right? Like, I totally
right.
get it. But I would also just, in the same extent, say, think about what you just said to me, which is that's the only song of his you've listened to. Like, did he propel himself into one hit wonderdom just strong enough that he was able to hold on to the ropes? Because I haven't heard it. I don't know
Yeah,
any other songs by him. Like,
I don't
that's
know.
that, you know.
I do know people go to. I mean, his concerts seem to sell really well. Like I see videos, and there's a lot of people there. So
I'm sure there are,
I guess my
honestly.
thought is sometimes stuff like that, or like 21 Pilots or something. I'm like, wow, this has a lot of personality.
Yeah.
Not
Well,
really
you
for
know, I have a
me.
personal relationship with 21 Pilots where I'm in love with them.
Oh, really? Is that
Oh,
can't
yeah,
be?
they were
Is
the
that
first
true?
concert I ever went to when I was like 12, 13. I used to know those guys because they're from Ohio, where
I'm
I'm
from
from.
Ohio, right? They're from Akron or
No, they're from
Cleveland,
Columbus. But
Columbus,
the funny thing is, people don't realize this, but they're a Christian band. At least they marketed themselves that way a lot more in the past. And
right?
the first ever music festival I went to, Ichthus, they played 3 sets at Ichthus. I saw them all 3 times that weekend.
Wow, no way.
Yeah,
So
but
you just
I
have
really
like that.
respect those guys.
You have like an endless love for like an affinity, I guess. It's like
Oh,
root. It's
truthfully,
so rooted that you could never even
yeah.
objectively.
Well, because like they're, if anything, they've been the ideal of what I think every musician should do. Because Tyler Joseph writes really personal, but at the same time, very interesting pop heavy songs. He cares about making them listenable, but at the same time he is exactly as reckless as he wants to be. Even at the I feel like so many artists are afraid of being pretentious. He is not afraid of that. He will say whatever he wants to say. But at the same time, like when you used to go to their concerts, they used to invent these gimmicks. Like once a month they would come to a concert and have some new giant gimmick to do at their show. And it made the shows really good. Like you knew pretty much immediately that they were going to be big. People were telling them back then, and like I think it was like 2010, that they were
Wow.
going to be like blowing up, and they would just stand there and be like, "Oh, thank you guys for saying that. We're trying our best," but it's like they knew what they were doing. They knew that
Yeah.
they were
Right.
on a rocket ship to the top, and they totally got there. Like, and to no one's surprise who knew them from that time, you know.
Right. There's so many bands that sound like them now. Like there's so many bands that were popular before them. Like I heard like
Yeah.
a Switchfoot song off their new album, and it was like
Oh,
I was like,
really?
this is
It's
21
like dead
Pilots.
on.
Yes, and there's another really popular band that I just don't really listen to. That I mean, it is a blatant ripoff. It's amazing to watch some
Yeah.
influential change bands that are like these artists who are like in their 40s or 50s are like, let's
They're
do
trying
this.
to catch up real quick. They're like, please, we got to get on this 21 Pilots
Yeah,
sound right
right.
now.
That's
Well, it's
cool.
so funny because their first album was like a combination of a hip hop album and a Postal Service album. It's like
Hmm.
really, when you first knew them, they were like clearly really into Postal Service.
Wow, like Ben
Um,
Gibbard.
yeah, and then they've really come a long way since that sound too. But like even back in the day, like listening to it, you were like, you guys clearly listen to a lot of the Postal Service, huh? Like that's what it is. Okay.
Yeah, right. That's interesting. They yeah, I mean, they're one of those bands that also hustled on the touring end where I feel like everybody everybody's got friends, and I'm not reducing your perspective, but there are a lot of people who like claim ownership to the band who
Yeah.
like, I knew them before they got big. Like then because
Well,
they
and that's
because they
part of
toured
the
so
selling
much. And
point, you know.
yeah, right. Making like having your audience feel like they're a part of
Yeah.
the core
Well,
group.
musicians at their core are just cults, minus the courage to say that that's what they are. But really, that is what they are. And the
The
bands with
culture.
like, no, just a cult. They just baptize people. Look, I know a girl who just with the new Taylor Swift album bought. Taylor Swift put out 8 different versions of the CD. So she bought all 8 versions of that CD. Now you're telling me that Taylor Swift didn't know that people were going to buy all 8 and that she was banking on the fact that people have dedicated their lives to Taylor Swift, that they were
Right.
she knew what she was doing. They're Taylor Swift. My sister is in the Taylor Swift cult, and I can tell you personally, Megan, if you see this, you are in the cult, and she would not deny it. Like it's just a straight up cult. They
Yeah,
sell
Megan
an
loves
idea.
it.
They're selling ideas through these songs, and that's what people relate to and connect to, and then dedicate their entire lives to. Which 21 Pilots has also done a crazy good job of. They probably have the most loyal fan base out of anyone on the planet.
Yeah, it is really, really amazing. I think, okay, one thing I want to ask you is we're talking about, we're talking about retail and talking about uh, growing a music and visual art and just project in the world of social media. Um, Social media gives you a lot of analytics, like we're saying, that help you, or they act like they're helping you with growth or this or
Yeah.
that, but they all serve different purposes. And with your relationship with social media, I want to kind of move beyond that and ask, like, I think a lot of times as an artist and as a creative, you're working towards something, but you don't always know exactly what it is. But you said that y'all have five, you said maxims. What was the word? You have like five things that y'all like
Just like principles. We have our
principles.
yeah, we have our principles. Well, I don't want to
Interesting.
go into them too much in depth on recorded camera, just while we're still working them out and building them slowly.
Sure.
But one of the core ones that we've been working on for a while that really I think at its core is what one of retail's core ideas is just well, there's a couple. What do I want to talk about? Which one? Wow. So our stated goals originally on our page is life is performance, music is marketing, long live retail, pure retail. And then one of the other core ideas that we sell a lot is that your friends and your family only want what's worst for you. Um,
Hmm.
and between those, that makes up a majority of it without having to go into too much detail. I don't want to play my cards too just like on the table because that takes away some of the
Okay.
mystery of interacting with me one on one and just having that conversation.
Yeah.
But
Sure.
I mean, I remember we had a conversation about this a long time ago in my kitchen on that snowy night in Ohio.
Yeah,
Um,
that's right. I guess about a
I
year
think me,
ago.
you, and Sam had a pretty good conversation about it. I remember we were at that bar.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the three of us. We had a little bit of conversation about it. But the newest one is just the idea that I think an idea I've been really obsessed with is honestly the idea that your friends and your family only want what's worst for you, which this is where we start to get a little culty, but I'm not even apologizing for it. I just think people that are close to you in your life, everyone is kind of a narcissist when you break it down, and they see the people around them as pieces in their lives. And even if you want theoretically what's the best for someone, you can never want for them to be out of your puzzle entirely, even if it's the best for them. So I think people subconsciously try to close down and in and around on you to stop you from growing past certain points. And on top of that, I think your friends want to see you do good, but never better than you. So there's a lot of weird like when you get to points where you're starting to be successful, I think your friends try to like crabs in a bucket. They just try to pull you down slightly. And I think it's important that sometimes there was a time in my life where I would just get really fucked up and go to these parties and just talk to people about their lives. And I just realized that if I could just objectively tell them whatever, that their friends just wouldn't allow them to say, they would just find so much relief in the fact that somebody else agreed with their own selfishness and putting themselves first. And I think weirdly, like as a group, we want to give people the permission to like grow beyond the people in their lives, which I think is like a radical thing to try to do, and truthfully a very
Right.
painful thing to do. And I think weirdly people kind of want, this is the whole thing about music giving you permission to be certain ways. I think art can give you permission to want to grow past the point you're at now, even though that's really painful. And I think everyone learns that when you leave high school and you start trying to like sort your own path. It's like people drop and appear in and out of your life in moments, and then all of a sudden you're just so connected to them that you're trying to like hold on to this as much as you can. But yeah, I'm not explaining it great, to be honest with you. It's
No.
early, it's 3 p.m., not the
No,
proper amount of fucked up.
I think it's interesting because so the like the mottos, like these points that y'all are working through, are not necessarily like goals. They're more just like a standard or like a code of ethics that y'all use
Exactly.
to center yourselves around.
Even in my first band, I sat down and I wrote what was considered to be the Agoraphobes Bible, where I sat down and I just wrote lists of rules for everyone in the band. Like, these are the rules you have to follow at all times. And
Yeah.
really, Retail started the exact same way. It's a code. It's a principle. It's a series of principles about how, even if I don't think it's the right way, it's how I'm trying to be right now. Which is to stand for something and to have a group of people who are all standing for the same thing. I think it becomes powerful. I just think a lot of people weirdly, just especially in art, they just chase this really temporal idea, which is success. And I think when you start met by how successful you are, you start to just crush yourself, because that's not a real metric. When people say I want to be successful, they don't have a number in their head. They don't mean, oh, if 1,000 people listen to me, if 10,000. They're just making a blanket prescription that they'd like to be in a better place than they are now.
Right.
And I think by putting these principles out and basically saying, if you want to work with me, you have to abide by these. And at the same time, everything we make has to explain, justify, rationalize these core feelings. Then not only do you really cut through the noise of artists who don't really want to be artists, they just want to be looked at. But also it means that you can really judge pieces one at a time about whether or not they reach the goal you've set out for yourself. It lets you judge things on a song by song basis, as opposed to like even an album by album basis, where people are like, oh, well, this album didn't get streamed enough, so it's not successful, this whatever. As long as it lives up to the principle, I think most people should just stop being artists. I think if we're going to just get into this, there are too many artists. We all got to stop. Everybody needs to stop immediately, because I think right now we're just at a point where like we're having the idea of being authentic sold back to us by corporations that are trying to control that, which is, wow, what a pretentious thing to say. As soon as I said corporations, I hated myself. But I think people at the end of the day there's a sickness in people where they want to be individuals. And I think art at its core is the celebration of an individual. When you like an artist, you feel like you know them, you feel like they've put their personality in front of you, and you get to connect with this person. And I think people who strive to be seen, which I think is what everybody wants. If everyone could just admit what they really wanted, everyone would just be walking down the streets screaming at the top of their lungs, "Look at me," at all times, and the noise from every city would be deafening, because people would just be screaming at the top of their lungs. And so when I see people putting out art, all I see is somebody without the courage to scream at the top of their lungs in the street, especially if it's uninspired. So I just think in general, people need to stop caring so much about themselves as an individual and see themselves more as a group. I just know me personally, whenever I see myself as an individual, my life gets worse. And whenever I see myself as a group of other people, my life gets better, which is even in a sense what Retail's about, is trying to crush my own need to be an individual through bearing it under numbers and numbers of people, to the point that we've just escaped into each other and no longer exist.
Isn't that also what religion is?
Oh, of course. This is a religion, but just without the fancy, without the tithes. So you're lucky. Maybe in a couple years I'll have the courage to put those tithes on there, and then I'll be talking to you from a much nicer apartment. But
It's
I mean, it
kinda
is what religion is. But at the same time, I think religion has been really undermined just by the sense of people not believing in the grander structure. And also, I think there's been a big problem with Christianity. Backstory for the audience. Both of my parents are pastors. My sister goes to Yale for divinity. So not
Right.
an a-religious upbringing. And, we knew each other in Nashville. Everyone is mostly religious in Nashville.
Yeah.
I think weirdly, churches have started like trying to market themselves like they're a product. And so they've run they've amassed these giant churches, these mega churches, because recruitment is kind of what they push to above everything else. I mean, even growing up in the
Mm,
church, they really push the idea of like recruit your friends into Christianity. And
yeah.
I think the most effective marketing is emotional marketing. And so when you've marketed to a group of people emotionally their entire childhood, but not intellectually, when they grow up, they start to resent the fact that they feel like you preyed on them, which is certainly how I know a lot of people who grew up in the church feel that way, where they feel very
Mm,
resentful towards like the people in their lives who used religion as a way to control them. And then they don't trust it because they don't trust that it wants what's best for them. And then at that point, they don't really feel like they have a personal relationship with God or whatever. And it kind of just drives them into this certain lifestyle. Um, but I think
right.
in a weird way, like I want everyone, I really value religion. I would like everyone to crawl their way back into religion. I just think right now it's at a point where it's too like Facebook ad. You know those Facebook ads where they used to have like ukulele music, and then they're like, here at Facebook you've been friends with this person for 3 years. It's like they
Yeah,
play that
yeah, yeah.
shit at church now. They play stuff like in the morning announcements with like ukulele music and like this weird like, here's what we're doing this week. And I just think everyone is so cynical right now, and they're just tired of that. It just
Yeah,
disgusts them like inherently.
yeah.
um so instead, we have these weird groups that we build for ourselves, and we have the Taylor Swift fans and the 21 Pilot fans. Instead of being religious, they just dedicate themselves to this artist, which I'm not saying I want to be, but I definitely think it serves its own purpose in people's lives.
Yeah, right.
Certainly.
Are you familiar with Anton Newcomb by chance and the Brian Jonestown massacre?
Yes, I am.
Cool. When you mentioned shouting in the streets, you reminded me of On Thank God for Mental Illness from 1996. After the album ends, there's like this 30-minute bonus album that's like considered one song called The Sound of Confusion. And it starts with him yelling on the streets, and he's just like screaming at people. And he's like, I'm looking at you. He's like, Jesus died for you. And he's like screaming at people. So you talk about going out in the streets and screaming, I'd say at least Anton Newcomb might meet your
Oh, he
standard.
gets me. Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, I've never recorded any of my episodes, but if I had a camera with me, I could put out 12 albums of me doing exactly that.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, I think that what you're saying makes a lot of sense. And I especially the idea that what you're doing is something beyond just trying to grow numbers. And I think you're right that like a lot of times we don't know as artists what the end goal is. We don't really know what we're working towards. And all we can do is kind of just like watch all these apps are like, well, here's what you need to look at is like
Yeah.
grow these numbers, like get more streams, get more YouTube views, get more likes, get more followers. But what does that do? You like what are we working towards? And so
Well, it
I think
just
it's interesting that
encourages
y'all
people
have
to
that.
sell out. It encourages people to just be cheap because cheap
Right.
things work. I mean, it's just the truth. Like, I'm on TikTok. I see what's working. I see
Right.
what's going viral.
Well, that's what's interesting about talking about doing something in this modern era, like in 2020 to 2021 now. If you're working to create something that impacts culture, that combines music and visual art and fashion, how can you do that without just totally selling it out? Like, because the thing that people
Yeah.
will look at is like, we know who's most popular on Instagram. It's the influencers, and no one really like.
Yeah.
What is that? Like, what is that culture? Is that what we all have to work towards? Like,
Well,
what is the end goal, and how do you make
this
it
is
not
what
that?
this is what is actually beautiful about being in New York is that when you're in Tennessee or Ohio, these ideas of like influencer culture that they exist, but they exist nebulously, and they exist in New York and LA.
Right.
Having been out here, I get to really dip my toes in that water every day, and I assure you I do. I assure you I dip my toes in those pools. And the funny thing is they operate by their own logic. Influencer circles, like, I don't know if you know this, but like in New York, there's a bunch of these social clubs. They're called like Ludlow House and like Soho House, and they're like dedicated to neighborhoods, and they're like these social clubs where rich people go to meet like young cool art people or whatever. And if you just say you're like an artist, they give you like a discount. They let you wander around.
Wow.
Um, but the logic is just, it's absurd out here, man. Uh, really, I can't even explain it on camera. It's just like, you really have to like dip your toes in that water of just like every person you meet is like some 26-year-old who stole their parents' credit card and flew to this party from London where they were last night because they're doing whatever. It's just like,
Right. Right.
it's really crazy. But I think you brought up a really great point, which is I think why people apologize for marketing, which is like they're afraid of the idea of selling out. They recognize that I think people in their minds, they treat the music industry like that Pink Floyd song "Welcome to the Machine," where it's like any attempt to engage with marketing is just selling out. There is no way around it. To me, there's a version where you don't sell out, you buy in.
Mm,
And I think like the perfect example that everyone knows of that is like Andy Warhol and the idea of pop art. It's like I think that this is my real feeling. This is what retail strives to do, is that the only way to market effectively to a group of people who are tired of having things marketed to them is to be so over the top and so unapologetically aggressive with your marketing in like an almost sarcastic way that it's clear that you're making fun of the situation, but at the same time it does what you needed it to do. So you kind of get to have this win-win scenario, which is weirdly
right.
why I think other ads have really realized this, which is why half the ads now look like the Tim and Eric show, where it's like they're just doing this absurd nonsense. They're just having like, I saw a Sprite commercial recently where like it starts with two cowboys just drenched in sweat, and then they're like, I'm thirsty, and then the back of their horse opens up and it's a cooler, and then they drink a Sprite, and that's the whole ad. And it's like that was nothing other than absurdity, and you just are banking on the fact that it's so absurd I won't hate you for the fact that it's an ad. But weirdly we
Right.
don't, we totally excuse that. We let the whole Old Spice commercials that used to exist, like we excuse those commercials entirely because they're so like aggressively wacky. And I
It's
just wish
almost,
more
yeah, right. It's
musicians
like they're
would
self-aware
embrace
now.
that idea.
Right, right. Go ahead.
No, no, that was the end of that point. It's just like you need to embrace the idea of just being absurd and crazy. And I'm tired of like these old heads, these like 40-year-olds being like, if you want to market, you got to do it like this. It's like, do you even know
Interesting.
how to market, man? Because I've seen
Yeah.
record companies and y'all are floundering right now. So why am I talking to you at all? Like,
Yeah, right. The whole game is busted. The
it's
whole,
busted.
the end goal.
We got approached by this guy who like he used to manage some really big bands, like some weird shit in the 90s, and he was like, let me manage you, you can give me this percentage. And I just was like, okay, well, what will you do for us? And he's like, what do you mean what I do for you? And he was like, I'll make connections. And I was like, connections to who? And he was like, people you need to know. And it's just like at a point it's like the like nothing is gatekept by, at least in music, by like the old generations. Like you don't need to know an
Right.
A&R head anymore to get signed. You can just do what you're doing and keep it that.
Yeah.
Every rapper now brags about not having a deal. It's like if they're bragging about it, why do I need a deal? Like fuck them.
Yeah, right. Do you think, yeah, right. I keep been really trying to dig into different artists about this on this show. Like, and I feel like I keep just depressing people, but I'm genuinely like, how do you make money as an artist anymore? And record labels don't count because
Yeah.
they are just giving you something that they want back. Like they give you $80,000, but you have to pay it back.
Yeah,
So
they front you that. When you get a deal, people don't even realize this. When you get a deal, the deal they're giving you is the money that they say they're going to use to market your album, not what you're being paid. So it's not like if you get $1 million deal, you have $1 million. You have $1 million to go towards your budget.
right, exactly, the
And if you
budget
don't
of your
recoup it,
project.
then you owe them that money back, and you get like smashed.
Right. So what is an actual way that people anymore can make money if it's not because you don't sell CDs anymore? I mean, is it just touring and selling a product or like merch or fashion or whatever it is?
I mean, truthfully, I think for most artists, that is pretty much like if you're a band of horses right now, just picking a random person. If you're a band
Right.
of
Just
horses,
a band.
you tour and you sell t-shirts at your set, and then you do merch bundles where you sell, if you buy a digital download of your album, they'll give you a t-shirt, and then they do that so that it tracks as like a Billboard sale. So they just count every t-shirt as a sale
Interesting.
towards their record so they can put it on a label and climb up for it. um
Whoa.
but I mean, that is how you
Never
make
thought about that.
money for, well, that is what they do legitimately. They basically, if you ever go buy, like even a 21 Pilots does it. If you buy a t-shirt from 21 Pilots, they're like, and it includes a free digital download of the album, and the only reason they do that is so they can count it as an album sale and send that to Billboard so it looks like their album is selling more than it actually is. It like doubles up.
Whoa.
um but I mean, I think really at this point, what I really want musicians to do is like double down as influencers. Like, I don't know if you know this, but Frank Ocean has his Audi sponsored. And so Audi just gives him free cars and like some money to be like, only say you drive Audis. So he just gets free cars and money just to be like, I drive Audis. And weirdly, I
Mm,
think that artists need to absorb influencers and make them irrelevant, because I'm tired of influencers walking around just doing nothing other than marketing brands. Like, I think that if you're an artist, you should to be that influencer and try to just work out brand deals constantly. And even if it's like sarcastic to the point that you don't really care or mind, like, I think art should overtake these influencers and make them irrelevant, which I think is the next logical step. If you really were to walk it out,
Interesting.
or at the very least, I think it would be very interesting if a group of artists picked an influencer, pretended that she was single-handedly outputting these products, and then she could be the best of both worlds. She's like a corporate controlled individual that there's like a council of 10 people that create things for her, and then she just sells the idea that she is that artist, and that elevates her to be the ultimate influencer, because the ultimate influencer isn't someone who sells other people's ideas, it's someone who sells their own ideas.
Right. So in the if you can continue to be at least if you can continue to be who you are, and you're just taking a picture with, but you get some free swag, and like
Or
after
whatever.
after you do your, you know, after you finish your snowboard run, you drink a Red Bull or something, so that Red Bull will pay you. It's like,
Yeah.
I guess you're still getting to authentically do what you are. I mean, to a certain extent, some people might say you're compromised or you're like selling out, but at the end of the day, if you as
What
long as you
is
can keep
selling out?
yeah, and if you can keep doing what is you, like until those people are telling you what to do, which is what a record label
Yeah,
does
that's
way
exactly
more
right.
anyway, then you're really, yeah, maybe that is one of the more
And I just think people don't have the courage because they think that people would mock them for it. But I would just say no one is mocking Andy Warhol right now. No one is making fun of him for his Campbell's can. They'd put it in a museum and tell you it's high culture. So
right,
just double down on everything and just take money any way you can. But the truth is, I mean, how did musicians before make money? Yes, they sold records, but then they were selling T-shirts and concert tickets too. The only difference is now one of those avenues has been destroyed. So if you are in music, you just need to already go into it with the idea of like, unless I'm the Growlers and I'm willing to be on the road, or Nordista Freeze, and I'm willing to be on the road 250 days out of a year, like, you're asking for at a very least like a medium income job, unless you try to grow into another revenue source.
right,
Um, but I think growing into another revenue source is like totally feasible as long as you open your mind in terms of what is possible for you to even do. I mean, that's why I think even retail is so focused, for me at least, on like visual arts, because I think visual arts is one of the easiest things to sell if you're selling an identity behind it. I mean, that is all Andy Warhol sold, is he just made mass produced copies of very simple images that he thought would sell and sold them to half the country and then called it a day. And that really is like, I think in another way, that's the thing. I feel like band merch is just so lazy 90% of the time. I hate the designs. They're not really like good clothes. They're just kind of like a billboard for whatever band it is, and they just don't really take it seriously. I think that's also why people like Tyler the
right,
Creator make so much money, because he just was like, fuck it, I'm not going to sell these albums, so instead I'm just going to make 20 different pairs of socks and a bunch of weird t-shirts on Golfwang and just sell those instead. And now
right,
at the point where his clothing is at, I mean, he basically makes full wardrobes of clothing and makes his money selling those. He's not making money off of his records, and he
right,
is not poor, and by any stretch of the imagination, you know.
totally,
Same with like ASAP and the ASAP mob. Like, they have V-Loan, they sell V-Loan stuff, and that's how they get their fucking money. And
yeah,
along with
right,
doing their brand sponsorships, like rappers, this is what I love about rappers, is that at the end of the day, rappers aren't afraid to sell out, because that is part of the cake. When you go to be a rapper, you in your mind already might as well have sold out. It's what like indie bands haven't got, which is like, no one will hold it against you if you make money. No one will be
yeah,
like, screw that person. They're making money right now and also making music I really love. Like, it's why the Strokes had to keep putting out albums, because they kept running out of money and going broke. It's like, listen, I
right,
really love Angles, but at the same time, Julian Casablanca said the only reason they made that album was because of money issues in the band. So it's like, Julian, just sell some T-shirts or something, bud. Like, come on now.
yeah, right, right, yeah, that that's so interesting. I've been listening to this podcast out of LA. These two guys like are kind of famous on like TikTok and the internet and comedy clubs and stuff.
Yeah,
Just kind of like internet dudes. And oh, it was so refreshing. Like I watch it every week, and every week they just say like, it's not like, hey, please like and subscribe. They're like, hey, we want to keep doing this. We'd love to. We have a lot of fun doing it. If we can't get more people sharing this and subscribing, then we'll
yeah,
probably we just can't. And it's like they're so straightforward, and they have like brands that like sponsor it now, and like they've just slowly have just been really, really taking off. And the whole time they've been doing this thing that I really admire, and then they'll pause, and and every single episode they're just like, do this to support us. And the way
Yeah,
that they just like look you in the eye and just tell it straight is so refreshing, right? Because so much of indie culture is so self-conscious when there's no reason to be, because like we desperately,
that's right.
need that support, and we're asking for it already by creating these products. It's like, why are we ashamed to
And
like,
the only person keeping score is you. So who are you justifying yourself to? The only person
yeah,
counting is you.
right.
Um, Look, win or lose. I can't believe I'm about to make this quote, but win or lose, I don't keep count because nobody's checking. And
Whoa.
yeah, I mean that's really what it comes down to. I just think when you free yourself from the fact that like everyone is their own biggest critics and that everyone is the center of your own world, you start to realize that you're doing weird actions just to please yourself because you would judge someone else if they were doing that, but you know your own situation, you know. No
Right.
one no one will root for you more than yourself, and no one will shit on you more than yourself too. So it's like pick which voice in your head you want to support. Are you going to be your own cheerleader right now, or are you going to just shoot yourself in the foot and make your own life impossible?
Right. Yeah,
Um,
totally.
there's no
Because
need
you're,
to do it.
yeah,
And I'm
right.
a total asshole, so I get it. It's like people are nervous of people like me being out there and being like, "Did you see that guy drink a Coke in his most recent music video? What a sellout!" But I wouldn't say I'm genuinely. I don't think people say that anymore. I think if anything, having a brand sponsorship has become this weird badge of honor. I don't know if you know this, but there's this trend where influencers were faking brand deals just because they assumed that if you thought brands were reaching out to them, that they were like cool and on the come up. So they would just start faking brand sponsorships unpaid because it was such a badge of honor to be supported by a brand that they just wanted people to think they were at that level. So I think it's flipped
Wow.
around. Like if you get a sponsorship, you like are seen as legitimate. You know what I mean? You're seen as an authentic, real band. There's a band that was marketed to me recently
Whoa.
a bunch, which was Disc, and Disc. You know, they clearly their record label put I want to say at least $100,000 into marketing the new album they put out. Um,
Wow.
and I didn't know about the band beforehand, but I kept seeing this goddamn ad, and then finally I clicked it, and now I really like the band. And the truth is, and back in the day, I Fiddler, if you know Fiddler,
Sure.
their brand, their label put like 50 grand behind showing their 40 ounce on repeat video that they shot. So I saw the Fiddler ad and I clicked that, and I've gone to a Fiddler show, you know. So like clearly
Right, right.
marketing works in a very real way. Like I like Fiddler, and if Fiddler can sell out, if the punk band where the lead singer's pregnant girlfriend died doing heroin, if that guy can sell out, then you from Nashville, Tennessee, with your Jesus hair and your flannels, you can sell out too. Okay, it can happen.
Yeah, right. Yeah, wow, that's such a good point, dude. That's straight up liberating. For I hope everybody listening to this takes that seriously.
I mean, I hope so too. I just want everyone to be like we're at the point where you're staring into the jaws of a beast, and it's like take what is yours and don't apologize for it. Like
Right.
because that is what everyone is going to do, you know. That is what everyone is if that's what other people are going to do at the very least. So you're just deciding to sit on the sidelines while other people do it, but you not doing it will not be an artistic statement. You will be thrown into the trash bin of society. So
Right.
just decide if you're more comfortable in the trash. Look, I'm to quote Morrissey, I got in the trash can and I stayed there all night because it felt like where I belonged. If you belong in the trash, then just climb in and find comfort in your own destruction. But if you don't, then uh, then go for it. You know, be a
Yeah,
little more
right.
savage. Get your pitchfork and go to war.
This is really refreshing to hear you say this, because this is the conversation I've been having. It's that we are, as an industry, at such a standstill. I mean, now, especially with COVID, not even being able
Yeah,
to, you can't even tour. But already with like CDs, just the whole game changing, where now you go from selling CDs to getting streams, all that. We all know that. But it's like when you really, really think about, when you like look at your career in the eyes and you think like, how am I ever going to make enough money to sustainably do this? And not just do this as like a passion project, but I mean, do this as my whole
yeah,
life. It's like there's not a lot of ways to do it that aren't what we're talking about right now, like adapting. And I think that's why that's why hip hop is so popular, is because they are just there's so many rappers who are just doing everything right now in the
that's
industry.
exactly right,
They're just excelling. It's
bro.
just
And they get a
incredible.
check every second they can. I don't know if you've seen this, but on TikTok recently, Megan Thee Stallion has a Tinder ad where Tinder paid Megan Thee Stallion to promote. I don't know what Tinder needs to be promoted. I feel like we're all very aware of what it is, but apparently they want to promote
Right.
themselves right now. So she's on stage and they just give her a bunch of money to just show up, where it's like I feel like a lot of indie artists wouldn't do that in any way, but like I think part of it is rap culture in the mainstream at least is kind of a braggadocio culture. So you get people like Travis Scott having a McDonald's meal, which is like, why does Travis Scott need a McDonald's meal? No, but you better believe they gave him a shit ton of money to do
Oh
that, and that
yeah.
really is like, and nobody is mad at Travis Scott. I'm not mad at Travis Scott for getting
Right.
his money. I'm not mad at. Do you remember in like from like 2008 to like 2016 where every music video had a Beats pill in it for like 12 seconds? You know, because Beats just was like, we really need to sell these pills, so we got to put
Right.
it in every video. No
Wow.
one got
Yeah.
mad at anyone with those videos. They just did it. We're at a different era where it's like I think weirdly we're just inheriting. When I talk to older people, they kind of explain it to me like this: of like, I don't know if you know Bill Hicks, but Bill Hicks has this joke about how when he saw Jay Leno do a Doritos commercial, he was like, "What do you need more money for, Jay Leno? Like, how much money was that Doritos commercial worth to you that you're that rich and you just needed the extra $50,000? Like, fuck you." And that's how people used to feel about like Led Zeppelin, where Led Zeppelin, because of record sales, they had so much money that if you were an artist who was also doing brand advertisements, it was like you're just being greedy at that point. Like, there's no need for you to do that.
Mm,
But we flipped entirely where all a song does is get people to look at you, and then once people are looking at you, you have to monetize their attention, and brand
right.
deals are the way that you monetize the attention that is put on you as an artist,
Right.
and no one should apologize for it. That is what the game is now. Like, that is what influencer culture is. And honestly, influencer culture is slowly dying, I promise. Like, the numbers are
I
going
think so
down,
too.
people aren't getting paid as much, the deals, because it's just everyone's trying to do it, brands are less willing to give out like real money. They give essentially pocket change now to people, and so that when that collapses, the money's going to go somewhere else for the advertising, you know. And
Yeah.
although maybe truthfully maybe we're at the end of this ridiculous system anyway, because like at a point there's a point where it has to just like collapse on itself. I'm not sure when that point is going to hit. um but
Right.
it's like the fact that we're saying like, oh, now this whole class of influencers, they're not going to be able to make money. Is there just a point where everyone is going to be doing art for free and also going to be like a pottery teacher? You know, is our generation's next David Bowie going to be a teacher by day and then touring at night? Like, what is that
Right.
just the level we're going to reach to? Like, maybe it is. I don't know.
Well,
Uh,
we certainly have to just keep adapting in the meantime.
that's
You
right.
know, and using all
Adapt
the
or die.
resources that are available. So
Yeah.
yeah, dude. Uh, I have a lot more I want to talk about. We've reached the end of our hour block. I don't want to keep you any longer, but
Oh
next,
well.
but I do want to talk about next time. I have a lot more I want to talk to you about, specifically about the future of everything. I
Well,
think
maybe we'll just have to do a part two sometime then for your loving audience, who I'm
I would.
sure will not hate me at all.
No, dude. Actually, I don't think they will, man. I think they will love you. I'm excited to see what you do next. Yeah, let's do it again. Especially like if you have anything you want to come on and promote for you guys. If the crew has anything, don't need a rep. You can always come plug
I
it
mean,
here.
truthfully, right now, just so that our loving audience doesn't stay and wait, a lot of what retail's been doing recently is we've kind of been getting paid to work on other like people's projects. That's kind of we've been like
Cool.
kind of like I guess we've really been working like more of a marketing agency where we're doing work for other people to kind of like figure out how we want to promote things.
Right.
So our plan right now is me and Theo are working tirelessly on stockpiling as much content as possible. So basically the beginning of next year, well, like spring of next year, we will be doing our first official onslaught of releases. And that's when really like we'll start launching. So there'll still be a
Sweet.
little bit of time before we start doing anything personal.
In the meantime, people can follow long_live_retail. Are
You
you
don't
on
need to
Instagram
follow
and
us at all.
stuff?
We do not care about those numbers.
Really?
Go listen to the song if you want
Well,
to.
how
We're
can
on
people,
Spotify, but
what about people connecting with y'all? How do people
yeah,
keep in
connect with me
touch?
personally. Give me a call. My personal phone number is 513-614-2710. That's not a joke. Give me a
Come
text.
on. Come on. That's what I like to hear. Right on. Well, thanks for talking. It's been
Yeah, of course,
for
Freeze.
real. It's been really awesome. So
Yeah, for real. And I'm just glad we've talked. It's actually been like a long while since you came to Ohio. So
it was about a
when
year
was the
ago.
last time we saw?
It was like around Christmas time, I think, or late mid-November, I think. So
And then we
anyway.
got way too drunk and did that open mic just by chance where you really killed the crowd with your harmonies, you know. Ooh, they
That
were
was
tight.
that was really fun. That was really fun at that bar. That was really fun.
Yeah, for sure. Well, all
Yeah,
right, Freeze. I'm gonna get out of here. I have the busy New York lifestyle to get back to.
yeah, the hustle.
The hustle. That's right. Never stops.
Yeah, peace out.
All right, peace out, bro.
Thanks for talking.